So part two, this part is going to be about Rails generate and the different types of generations that we're going to use. Now, I know from my experience that I'm going to need Rails generate models. I know that I am probably going to need to name my table, and that's going to be the first parameter I insert in Rails generate model. So my first parameter will be my table name. My next parameter is going to be my first parameter is my model name. My next parameter is my table name. And then the parameters are after that are all going to be call names. If my column is a string, I can leave it at that. However, if I have a different column type, I have to put in a colon and then put the type in. So I know this from running Rails G model, Rails G controller, and such a bunch. I don't expect you to have that memorized by the code challenge. If you do, that's great. But if you don't, that doesn't mean you don't understand how to do Rails or you don't understand how to do programming. It means that you've been in a program for a little under 6 weeks and you learned Rails last week. So if you don't know what something is and you don't have it memorized, that's okay. The main thing you need is the ability to look that up and Google it. You need to have some sense of what that item was. Now, this isn't just a beginner thing. Coding is so vast and large that there's not a developer, and I promise I know a bunch of developers who have every part of coding memorized. That's just not how human brains work, I don't think. Maybe someone's does, I don't know. But mine certainly doesn't. Most programmers I know, if not all, their brains don't remember everything. So what you'll end up doing, whether it is tomorrow or 5 years from now, is Googling your answers. And like I said, the important thing is knowing what you need. So when you start an application, you probably know I need Rails generate something. So when you Google, you're going to put in Rails generate. So I'll just leave out model in case that's all you remembered. When looking at our results, I know that Rails Ruby Guides is pretty good documentation and probably has what I need. So I am going to go ahead and control find, probably Rails G, and look here. We have Rails generate controller. So looking at the examples they give us a lot of information explaining what this is. If I have time, I would love to read it, but if I'm on a code challenge, things are going fast, I'm stressed out, I may not have time for that. So I'm going to get what I can from here. It's not always a good deal to skim documentation, but it's okay to do if you're on a time limit. So Rails generate, I knew that much. So controller. Controller seems to be the identifier I need for what I am generating. So when I look down here, the first thing this creates is our controller. It creates this route. It creates some views. It can looks like it created a test controllers for my controller and welcome controller. I'm seeing welcome a lot. I have welcome here. So what I can dig out from that is the first item being what I want to generate, the second item being the name of it. So I know I'm generating a welcome controller, so welcome is going to be the first thing that comes up here on all the things that it generates. And index, well, let's take a look. I don't really see an index here. In this example, if you do Rails controller welcome index, so I do see an index in my views, so it looks like that's what's being generated here for me. So welcome index, cool. So I know that's what that will give. I now know this is what will give me my controllers. So I wonder if there's a Rails generate model here that I can look up. Ah, there is, cool. So again, if I have time, it would be better for me to read through this pretty carefully and see what I need. So with the command Rails, we want article model. So yeah, so that's what that's saying. If I read through this a little carefully, what this is telling me is that Rails generate model, again, this is identifying what I want to generate. This is the name of what I want to generate. This, let's see here, title, string, text, text. Let's see what that means. So I'm not reading anything. Oh, look here, and a good example. So looking at our general models, this created a migration here that would look like this. So we have create articles. So again, that's where that articles comes in. It created a table called articles. Cool. And then it looks like these features here, these are my column inputs. So title, string, text, text. So the first item being the name of our column, the second being the type. Now, I know from experience that I don't need to type string here, but this makes it completely clear of what I would need to do. So let's go ahead and CD into our Rails now. So I'm going to go ahead and actually copy this over. Put this in, delete what I don't need, and go ahead and type in what I do. Let's reference our planned out model so we have it right in front of us so we don't make any mistakes. So Rails generate model, let's go ahead and generate conductor, because that's going to be a simple one. I know that it's only going to need a name, and I know that's going to be a string. Now again, you don't need to do this. I'm writing this to be clear so you'll understand that colon, then type is what's going to come up as the colon name and then the type of that column. All right, Rails generate, be careful when you're copying and pasting because you will copy things that you don't need. I'm not going to need this extra $, and let's hit that. Cool. So let's see what that actually made us. So I have my conductor model here. So did it make anything else? It didn't make my controllers. It doesn't look like it did, so I'll need to generate a controller. Cool. Did it make my views? Looks like I don't have my views, so I will have to make those or use something that will generate my views. Did it make my migration? It did. Awesome. So at least that part is done for me. So I'm going to go ahead and now save my time. I'm going to just press up a couple times and regenerate all the models I'm going to need, keeping in mind that my views and my controller won't be generated. So let's go ahead and take this out. We'll do orchestra. And an orchestra has a name, a classification, check my spelling, and a conductor ID for a foreign key. All right, cool. I'm gonna check that that generated how I thought. So one thing I do even as development is I do something and I check it. I do something and I check it. Again, it's very, very like seductive to hop into coding and code right away and just hack everything out all at once, but I promise it will save you time if you verify your work first. Even when you have a time limit going on, taking a second to make sure things generated in the way you expected them to will save you more time now versus having to undo those generations later and re-migrate everything and write those migrations again on your own. Just hop into your code, verify, yes, I have my orchestras table, I pluralized it correctly, I have the attributes I need. Here's an example. I forgot to put a type in for conductor. It's string here, I need to put in integer. Cool. So fix that, let's go ahead and generate my next model. So we have orchestra, we have conductor. Let's go ahead and do orchestra member. And I'm going to generate it with a orchestra ID, which is going to be an integer. I'm going to generate it with a member ID, which will also be a integer. All right, let's double check that that got created correctly. Checking my migration, integer, orchestra members. That looks correct, cool. Let's go ahead and double check that my models that I made are still being generated. I have conductor, looks good. I have orchestra member, looks good. I have orchestra, looks good, cool. So I only have 2 more things I need to generate. So let's do member, name, and then let's do Rails generate instrument, name, and member ID, which is again an integer. Cool. Let's double check that those were made correctly before I hop into anything else. All right, I have my member and I have my instrument in models. Let's check out my migrations. My migrations look good. So, cool. What I want to do now is pause. I don't want to generate anything more. I know that I'm going to need my controllers and my views later, but I need to make sure my database is set up correctly before I even do that. So before I hop into that, I'm going to migrate my database. Cool. So I know from this and all of these commands coming here, I know that my migrations were successful, or should have been successful. But let's double check my schema just in case. So, all right, conductors is here. It was created with a name, the type string. Instruments are here, name string. It has a member ID, cool. Members has a name, a string. Orchestra members, orchestra ID has an integer. Orchestras has a name and a classification and a conductor ID. And that looks good. It looks like everything I wanted. I'm happy with that. Things are perfect. Now, let's go ahead and hop into my